they say there's three types of agriculture today. Conventional, right, with its fertilizers and its chemicals, and we're working against nature. And then there's sustainable, which a lot of people are thinking, okay, we need to do sustainable agriculture. That's something like organic, right? It's not making the land worse. And sometimes it's making it better, but not always, because there's still a lot of tillage in organic agriculture, which is one of the most destructive practices. And then there's regenerative. So the reason regenerative agriculture is very different is it because its priority is to improve the ecology, right? Starting with the life in the soil, which we didn't really understand the importance of until very recently. I've even talked to people who went to school for agriculture and they were taught about the chemistry of soil, but not so much the biology. We're now waking up to the incredible importance of this biology. And so regenerative agriculture is one that takes land and returns it to a more higher and worthy state, essentially working with nature and just creating and improving the cycles of nature.
And can actually improve and regenerate topsoil.
That's exactly right. Yeah, there are 6 principles of regenerative agriculture, essentially. The first is context, right? We cannot do the same things everywhere on every farm. You really have to be mindful of the context. And then we have least disturbance. As I talked about tillage, it's interesting because we've been tilling land, which created the first Dust Bowl. And then some experts believe, Alan Williams talked to me, said we're in the midst of the second Dust Bowl. And again, that's because we're disturbing the soil with this tillage and disrupting that soil biology. But also this disturbance is in terms of pesticides and chemicals and fertilizers. And then we have living roots. We want to really maximize the amount of roots in the soil because the roots and the plants create exudates that go down into the soil, create aggregates. Yeah, exactly. A lot of them. And this soil structure that we really, really need to prevent erosion and help water holding capacity. And then we have soil armor. A lot of farms today are growing cash crops and they're only being grown for about a third of the year. And the other time the soil kind of lays bare. And when soil is bare, it can erode. Obviously, carbon can be sequestered, but it also kind of gets like a sunburn. And so you always want to have it covered. That's another one of the principles. And then biodiversity is just how do we increase the land or the life in the land. And that often starts underground with the microbes and making sure that the cows are pooping and peeing and they have their saliva. And it's just an explosion of life. Underground creates an explosion of life in terms of the vegetation, and then more animals, more birds, more pollinators, everything comes back. And animal integration is the last one. A lot of people think that cows and animals are bad for the land. And in some cases, they absolutely can be when they're allowed to overgraze. And that's another thing. Even in the grass-fed market, sometimes we're talking about continuous grazing, which is very different than a regenerative practice where you will move the animals in a way that mimics these predatory prey cycles, how the ecosystem evolved. There is some truth to animal impact being deleterious, but when they're used in these highly managed systems, they're actually the very solution that we need. And I just think it's fascinating that most people would tell you that agriculture is only healthy without animals, but animals provide the nutrients with their poop and their pee and their saliva. And then they stimulate grass growth because they're constantly biting at the grass. And then that grass acts like a straw and sucks carbon out of the air and puts it back into the soil. So animals are absolutely critical to the health of ecosystems. That's how the ecosystems evolved.